From the Fantasy Armchair, it is the Fantasy Tyrant. Hey there, fellow fantasy football freaks. Welcome back to the Fantasy Armchair. Back on the road once again, and this time, I'm taking Jerry to Tupelo, Mississippi, at the birthplace of the king himself, Elvis Presley. Honestly, this was the most interesting place in Mississippi. If you're from Mississippi, you probably know what I mean. Unless you count all those weird Civil War spots that tend to celebrate the Confederacy, not really my bag. So all hail the king. Pretty small house, actually. Humble beginnings for the king of rock and roll, don't you think? Anyway, before we get on with the show, we need 10% likes. So if you see the views down there and the likes aren't at 10% of those views, please do me a favor, help me out. Bump that up, will ya? Hit the thumbs up. Go ahead. I appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because if we hit 700 subscribers before the end of the month, I'm going to have a nice holiday treat for everyone. Nothing edible, but you'll see. The race to 700 is on. Help us get there. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you all for your continued viewership and support. Well, let's move on to week 10. Yeah, that's right. You know what that song means. It's time for my top 10 waiver wire picks for week 10. Number 10, Evan Ingram. The guy's always had raw ability and natural talent. He's just never really put it together. Or more accurately, the Giants have never found a way to get him the ball. But when they do, he actually performs well. Imagine that. Finally getting touchdowns 2 weeks in a row. He's really been the guy Danny Dimes is looking to, with so many injuries to the Giants' pass catchers. The Giants are getting healthier, but I see that being a gradual return more so than all at once. And the longer it takes for the wide receivers to come back, the more connection develops between Jones and Ingram. Now, Ingram is on a bye, so keep in mind that you won't be able to use him this week. But get ahead of the competition. You may get away with not even putting in a waiver claim. Just pick him up in the morning. But get him if you have the room, but don't have a stud tight end. You can play the matchups with Ingram and do well. Grab him. Number 9, Ramondre Stevenson. This is nothing more than a speculative stash, and the only reason I'm entertaining the idea of picking him up is because of his killer performances before the games counted, being the top running back throughout the preseason, and we're finally seeing some of the sparks of what we saw in those games. He'll just have to get some more trust from Coach Belichick, which, for a rookie who fumbled in his first game of the season, will be about as easy as teaching a cat to swim. But the potential is there, and he could be one of those stashes that wins you a championship. If the Pats find themselves at a playoff contendership, they might want to see what they have in Stevenson, and that uptick in usage could bring you home a title. It's risky, but worth a stash if you have the room. Number 8, Russell Gage. Yeah, I know Matt Ryan's been about as consistent as Aaron Rodgers' account of his own medical history, but hear me out. Gage is technically the number 1 wide receiver right now on the Falcons, since Calvin Ridley did the thing that all wide receivers named Calvin tend to do, hang it up too early. Yeah, Patterson and Pitts are getting a pretty large share of the targets, but outside of them, Ryan is sharing the love all around to Gage, Sharp, and Zacchaeus, just to name a few. But it's Gage who's been getting the 3rd most targets in that offense recently, and in the Falcons' last 2 games, Gage has put up his best fantasy game and most targets and catches back to back. So he's definitely earning more work week to week. And this week is a matchup he can really sink his teeth into, as he'll be feasting on the fantasy fiesta that is the Dallas Cowboys D. So if you're in need of a bye week fill-in or a wait-and-see stash, Gage could be your guy. Go get him. Number 7, Donovan Peoples-Jones. No OBJ, no problem. And the DPJ. While not featured in every game, in the games he has been featured in, he's received some high-quality touches and is the only Browns wide receiver to go over 100 yards in a game this season. The pass volume is never that high, but with Jarvis Landry as his only real competition for targets, DPJ is sure to get enough targets to sustain a flex or better production level. Honestly, there's not more to say, other than, look at that smile. He could charm the clothes off a nun. Get some shares off this guy now before there are none left. Good God, that was bad. Sorry about that. Number 6, Devontae Freeman. We didn't pay him no mind before, but now he's getting double-digit touches and touchdowns in every game, so I guess we can't ignore him anymore. He's showing he's still got a little wiggle and burst left in him. The Ravens clearly gave up on Tyson Williams a while ago, and Le'Veon Bell's just there to vulture goal line touches. You'd think he was like James Conner's mentor at some point or something. Anyway, his double-digit touches should continue, and he could be a serviceable flex option in bye weeks. Besides, he's the lead running back on an NFL team. This means he needs to be owned in all leagues. 20% ownership is just irresponsible. Grow up, people, and pick up Freeman tonight. Number 5, Tim Patrick. I seriously have him on this list in various positions like every week. He went down in ownership this past week, and I actually understand that as Jerry Jeudy is back and everyone's worried that Patrick will go back from the outer nowhere he came from. But this past Sunday proved that TP is sticking around. Yeah, I made a toilet paper joke. Let's not make a big deal out of it. On Sunday, he had his best game of the season, catching 4 out of 5 targets for 85 yards and a touchdown, scoring over 18 fantasy points, and that was all before going out with the cramping issue in the second quarter. He's averaging over 14 yards per catch on the season and is clearly still getting heavy usage, even with Jeudy back. He's still worth going to get, so enjoy the go. Over to your waiver wire and drop a claim on him like a deuce. Number 4, Van Jefferson. I'm determined to make the 3 Ramigos a thing. See, I even made a little graphic for it, like that. Anyway, it's not just a borderline offensive play on a cheesy old movie most of you probably never heard of, but it's becoming a full-blown thing. Kupp and Woods have been looking for a third to replace Cooks after he left, and they now have their guy. He's been targeted 6 or more times over the past 3 weeks, and he's likely to see his target share increase now that Djax has left for Las Vegas. I expect him to see even more targets as the season progresses, as he's the young stud of the 3, so hop on board the 3 Ramigos van while you still can. Number 3, Pat Freiermuth. A tight end this high? When we're talking about a rookie tight end who has gained complete trust in the end zone from his veteran QB, and who's getting better every week, and who has had at least 6 targets and 12 fantasy points over the last 3 games, and broke out last night for 5 catches on 6 targets for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns. Almost getting me the Monday night miracle I needed to keep my last untarnished team undefeated. Seriously, I'd have hated to bin my neighbors last night. Both those times Baby Gronk scored a touchdown. Anyway, this guy had major buzz in preseason, and even pre-NFL draft. You don't get the name Baby Gronk for nothing. Go get him before he scores another touchdown. Number 2, Rashad Bateman. He's been on my list here for the last few weeks, but he's still only 36% owned. And this past Sunday, he had his best game in terms of targets and catches, snagging 5 out of 8 for 52 yards. Keep in mind, that was only his 3rd game in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is throwing to his new toy a lot, and I see that production increasing as the season progresses. He could overtake Mark Andrews as the 2nd target behind Hollywood Brown by season's end, making him a valuable flex option in the playoff push. The matchups going forward look pretty good, and if anything were to happen to Hollywood, God forbid, you'd have an instant top 20 wide receiver with upside. But even now, he's a viable flex option in plus matchups, including this Thursday against the Dolphins, who are more generous than a rich old man on Viagra when it comes to fantasy points allowed to wide receivers, giving up the 2nd most in the league. So Bateman is a great pickup for this week and moving forward. Get him now. And my top waiver wire pickup for this week is Elijah Moore. He's been right on the cusp of a must pickup for weeks now, and I had him in my top 10 list last week. But after this week's performance, it's clear. He is who we thought he was, a star rookie wide receiver on a shitty team. Well, it appears the changes at the QB position have given that offense the shot in the arm it needed to produce enough to support fantasy viable players, and with Corey Davis out injured, Moore has stepped up and grabbed that proverbial brass ring. I had him as a sleeper on my Thursday show, and those who listened were handsomely rewarded. Moore hauled in 7 of 8 targets for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns, scoring 27-point fantasy points in PPR. I'm not saying Corey Davis gets Wally pipped, but I don't think Elijah Moore is going back to the bench. Since coming back from injury, Moore has had double-digit fantasy points in each game, averaging over 15 fantasy points across those 3 games. After this week's game against the stout Bills D, the schedule gets juicier than a Kardashian's ass for these guys, including games against the Texans and Jags and a double dose of the Dolphins, and then in championship week, they get a generous Buccaneers pass D. Elijah Moore can help a lot of teams win their titles this year. Think that sounds crazy? Well, I've got 2 words for you. Just watch. So that's it for the top 10, but I've got some honorable mentions here as well. I'm done trying to figure out that goddamn Eagles backfield. I don't know what the hell they're doing with it, and I'm tired of looking like a jackass because while we're promised Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, it's Jordan Howard coming back from the dead. And if you think I'm recommending him for a pickup, forget it. Been there, done that, gotten fucked plenty of times. Yeah, he's getting a workhorse share of the touches, still not recommending him, because I know the second I recommend him, he's gonna be a healthy scratch or some shit. Until there's some kind of clarity, I'm staying away from that backfield. Now with Sanders coming back soon, it's gonna be a mess. Same thing with the Saints wide receivers. Harris, Callaway, Stills. I mean, they're all worth a look, but picking one of them, it's impossible. So move on. Dan Arnold and Tyler Conklin are right on that cusp of the top 10 list. If the ones I have on the list aren't available, go after them. So Chase Edmonds is going to be out for a month or so. Obviously, that means that James Conner is going to see a big uptick in production. What's less obvious, I think Eno Benjamin sees some viable fantasy work too. He looked good this past week with 9 carries for 39 yards and a touchdown. And those of us who've paid attention have seen some sparks from him here and there. And if Conner were to get injured, which is pretty much inevitable, Eno Benjamin would be a major target. Get ahead of it if you're in a deep league and you have some room. Olamide Zaccheaus and Malik Turner gotta show me another good week of production before I recommend them. Donald Parham, on the other hand, has shown me multiple weeks of production. I was big on him this preseason. A lot of people give me shit about it. They're like, oh, maybe next year. I'm like, I don't know. I think by the end of the season, he overtakes Jared Cook as the number 1 tight end for the Chargers. And right now, that prediction's not looking too bad, is it? Keep an eye on him in case it comes to fruition. And finally, Justin Fields is on a bye this week. So if you've got the room on your bench to save for the future, stash him. He's been making improvements with each and every game. And he may become consistently fantasy viable before the playoffs. A must-own in 2 quarterback leagues and superflex leagues. Worth a stash in all leagues if you have the room. And yeah, get Mooney with him if you can. So there it is, folks. We're halfway through the season already. Hot damn. So that means it's time to start thinking about your playoff push. At no time in the season is it more useful to have a pocket guru to go to for one-on-one fantasy advice than right now. So get on it and check out my Patreon. You get that, plus exclusive content, exclusive videos, exclusive articles, grand prize giveaway entries, all kinds of shit, all for a price way lower than you probably think. So check out my Patreon link for that. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe, and set those waiver claims tonight. Good luck to you all on those, and I'll be back tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. It's Mixed Notes. Think like SNL's Weekend Update back when it was still good, but about fantasy football. Plus, I'll be answering all your burning questions as well. So I'll see you tomorrow night for Mixed Notes. Until then, I'm out. Peace.